Alors nous voici de retour.
So here we are back. I hope you had a nice lunch and that you're ready to go with our next session. This is going to be a big moment. Young people will be sharing their innovative ideas for transforming education. And please welcome the moderator, Irfaan Mangera.
Hello, 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 beautiful people. Good afternoon and welcome back to this energy-filled youth forum. What a day it has been so far. It is so incredible that young and old are gathered here today with hundreds, if not more, gathered online, all influenced through the various informal and formal education that led us to being here today, now, at this very moment, to hear from 5 more phenomenal young changemakers. My name is Irfaan Mangera, the Youth Activism Program Manager at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation based in Johannesburg, South Africa. A qualified educator by profession, but someone just like you who believes in the power of education to create change and bring about justice. I'm honored to be your moderator today, and without wasting any more time, I'd like to introduce and present the first speaker, who'd be covering Action Track 1 on inclusive, equitable, and healthy schools, a track that covers issues of inclusion, equity, gender, safety, health and nutrition, as well as education in emergencies and protracted crisis. To present his idea is Shrestha, an inspiring advocate for issues such as inclusive education, political participation, accessibility, inclusion of young people with disabilities, and much more. Nir serves as the president of the Blind Association in Nepal, Kathmandu Valley chapter, and unfortunately could not be with us today, but there is a video presenting his idea. Nir, the video.
Greetings from Mount Everest country, Nepal. I'm Nir Shrestha. Today we are discussing about transforming education, and it reminded me of my childhood memories. When I was 7, my siblings and friends had already been enrolled in school, but I was limited in home. After my parents came to know about blind schools, they admitted me, and then I started my academic journey. But I had to face lots of obstacles to get education. No braille books were available on time, no support system, no appropriate evaluation system, and even the teaching methodologies and learning environment was not suitable for me. However, I had no options except accepting those all things. And even today, the situation is not much improved. Today, more than 90% of children with disabilities are still out of schools. And those who are at schools, they are also facing lots of barriers in terms of access, in terms of communication, attitudes, reading materials, teaching methodologies, and all. That's why they are getting deprived from inclusive and quality education. We all tell that everyone has the learning ability and can learn based on their abilities. But don't you think we have taken enough actions to ensure inclusive education for all? No, we haven't. That's why we need to take actions aggressively. For this, we need to work on 4 levels: individual and family level, community level, school level, and the most importantly, government or system level. We need to work on 3 elements for this, that is acceptance, access, and accountability. By providing counseling services to the children with disabilities and their family members, by sensitizing to the community people, by capacitating to the school teachers, and by making accountable to the government authorities and other stakeholders, we can create appropriate and inclusive learning environment for all. Besides that, we need to work on access in terms of physical infrastructure, communication, participation, and other things. Imagine if I did not get education on time, would I be able to speak like this in front of you? I want to see all the children with and without disabilities learning together, playing together, and enjoying together. For this, we need to work on to achieve the targets set for 2030. Let's work together. Let's take collective actions. Thank you.
Wasn't that inspiring? I told you, very, very incredible young group of people we have here today. To present the second track, track 2, is someone who I had the privilege of meeting just yesterday. Someone who struck me as a resilient, calm, committed, dedicated, and equally inspiring young leader. Track 2 now focuses on areas such as foundational learning for lifelong learning, skills for employment and entrepreneurship, and education for sustainable development, which includes environmental education. Amanda Bennett Rivera is a youth program coordinator at the Earth Charter International Secretariat. Amanda was born in Costa Rica and grew up in the US. Amanda is passionate about gender equality, climate justice, and is also a member of the SDG for Youth Network. Please join me in welcoming Amanda to stage.
Hi, everyone. I recently learned about nature deficit disorder, coined in 2005 by Richard Loeb. This is what happens when humans alienate ourselves from the rest of nature, and it results in negative consequences, such as attention deficit and stress. Coming from Costa Rica, thanks to our wonderful coming from Costa Rica, you would not think I have experienced this, since my country has made some major improvements conserving nature. But even with this close proximity to ecosystems, I was one of those children that had to cram into a metal playground so that we could keep our school uniforms clean. Instead of learning from the amazing classroom that nature has to offer, we had to stay inside. When we think of innovative, it's hard to think about going back to the way things used to be, much before my lifetime, in order to bring about an improvement. However, when it comes to education for sustainable development, I believe that taking learners back to the outdoors is one of the most innovative strategies we have today to strengthen our capacities of respecting and caring for the community of life. We need to understand that interconnectedness of life, and to do that, we cannot isolate ourselves from the rest of the wonderful world that we live in. Being more connected to my environment has also helped me learn about my diet and how the food on my plate has reached my table. Because I've had the opportunity to visit farms and talk to people, this has helped me see how our choices, all of our choices, have an impact on other people and also on ecosystems as well. These are lessons we can learn from a very early age. For me, it has been amazing to see how much I have already learned about sustainable food systems just from spending time with my grandparents in the farm. Lastly, we need to strengthen relationships among humans to really practice global citizenship and keep our planet healthy and in harmony. I work at Earth Charter International in its education center. There, youth have been an integral part of our movement since the beginning. And it has been amazing to connect with individuals and be on a first-name basis with them, even though I may never meet them in real life. It has been great to see, I have been able to see how Greshma from India and Rocio from Panama have worked together to plan Saturday morning workshops for teenagers around the world to learn about sustainability. I have learned from Victor in Nigeria and heard about the advancements his students are making from environmental education through a systemic perspective. We can use this connectivity to our advantage because we not only can share our worries about the planetary crisis, but we can also share the solutions we have to offer. By bringing different contexts into a common space, we can truly become multipliers because we know we're not alone. I hope that in the near future, every student has access to these opportunities and more. My experiences embracing interconnectedness have helped me learn from fellow activists and students, but also from the rest of the species with whom we share a common home and hopefully a common future. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful contribution, Amanda. I think she deserves another round of applause. Thank you. A question now to you all. Do you think the world needs more change makers? Yes? Yes? Maybe? I think so. And in fact, I wish we had more young educators like our next speaker, Mr. Ilan and Verga, who will be presenting his idea on Action Track 3. Ilan is a K-12 educator and SDG advocate from the Philippines. He is making huge strides in transforming education through teacher training, curriculum realignment, and student empowerment initiatives. To tell us more about his work, I am pleased to introduce Ilan. The floor is yours.
I'd like to invite everyone to recall your childhood aspirations. When you were, say, 5 or 6 years old, what did you want to be when you grew up? Did you want to be a doctor? An astronaut? Maybe a famous pop star? Is it in your head? Once you've recalled that childhood dream job of yours, I invite you on the count of 3 to say it out loud to the person next to you. Again, what was your childhood dream job? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so this question of what shapes or influences is very integral. Again, this question of what shapes or influences our childhood aspirations and our childhood perceptions really set the groundwork for my own personal eureka moment and led to the creation of our unique education program in the Philippines called Youth for Better. Good afternoon. Bonjour à tous. My name is Ilan and Verga, a K-12 educator, both a teacher and teacher trainer, as well as an advocate for the SDGs. Over the last few years, in my school, International School for Better Beginnings, or ISBB, I trained teachers and guided curriculum realignment as integral parts of our innovative education model that infuses real-world civic engagement into preschool, elementary, and high school academics through student-led, project-based learning. The vision of our program was that every student would aspire and grow up to be a change maker, someone who leads positive change for people and planet, similar to the people in this room, no matter what field they choose to pursue in the future. The best way to do this is by starting them young, and by having teachers ingrain the skills, knowledge, and values of a change maker every day in the classroom, no matter the subject area. For example, our teachers applied grammar lessons to teaching kids how to write letters to local government officials. Math lessons were applied to analyzing relevant statistics in climate change. Our teachers were equipped and trained to empower students through regular, real-world, hands-on experiences in SDG-driven campaigns and advocacies. And as a result, change-making has become the students' shared reality. It's become the students' normal. Not only that, we've seen student engagement in the classroom skyrocket, and as a result, better performance in academics. Even our teachers have said they found a renewed calling to the teaching profession. Through this program, teachers have made change-making a concrete experience for kids, as opposed to just an inspirational quotation you'd find on the wall of a classroom. If we really want to achieve the SDGs by 2030, we need to equip and empower teachers and educators to mobilize a generation of change makers. And if we really want to be the change that we wish to see in the world, then we must transform the systems that shape who we aspire to become when we grow up. Thank you.
change maker, truly committed to developing a new generation of more change makers. Thank you so much, Ilan. The former president of my country, Mr. Nelson Mandela, says, "Education is the great engine of personal development. It is through education that the daughter of a peasant can become a doctor, that the son of a mine worker can become the head of a mine, and that the child of a farm worker can become a president of a great nation." Now, to focus on the next track 4, we have a transformative leader who will be speaking on digital learning and transformation. That draws focus on digital transformation of the education systems that all of our countries have, narrowing the digital divide, inclusive technologies, free, open, and high-quality digital education content, digital citizenship, well-being, privacy, and security. A mouthful, right? But you can truly see why these issues are necessary as part of the transformation agenda. To present on Action Track 4 is Tanya Rosas from Colombia, a truly transformative leader in my books and someone who works to provide underrepresented communities with personalized digital education. Tanya, the floor is yours.
Hear me? It's not working. It is? Okay, good. Thank you. I am Tanya Rosas. I am the co-founder of Origin Learning Fund and the OLAP app. I am also young leader for the SDGs at the UN Envoy on Youth. And today I would like to share with you all my story. It all started in my region. I come from the indigenous region of Colombia. It is located in the border area with Venezuela and in the northernmost point of South America. I was working on my thesis. I am happily lucky daughter of a couple that went to university, and I was able to access a scholarship as well. So I was working on my thesis when I found out that we remain in the same circle of poverty, generation over generation, because young people in my region, especially young women like me, don't develop the skills required to thrive in this modern economy, thus rendering a vast majority of young graduates jobless and unmotivated students and dropouts. In my region, for example, only 29% of students access education, and only 5% of them actually finish high school and access higher education. So it was a big issue, and it was clear that to overcome poverty, we needed to create a transformative change in our community. So we started developing OLAP. I started working with many young innovators from across the world, especially innovators that come from communities, underrepresented communities, because we understand the issue. And we started developing the platform that we call OLAP, which is a customizable platform that allows anyone, anywhere to access quality, interactive, engaging, and accessible digital education. And OLAP also, we train local teachers so that they can also create their own experiences and create a curriculum that is more engaging for young people. OLAP works offline, in low-tech devices. It also works in any language, even indigenous tongues, because we really wanted to create education that can be inclusive and empowering. So we started in my region in 2015, and last year, as I was selected as young leader, I started working with many corporations, organizations, and institutions across the world. And right now, we are in Pakistan, Philippines, Nigeria, Mexico, Peru, and across communities worldwide, empowering young people, not only for indigenous communities, but also immigrant students, people with disabilities. OLAP is basically a platform that can include them all, and it is also based on each community's needs. So we can adapt it to any need from different underrepresented communities. This is a huge journey. We started, as I mentioned, in 2015, but I am so excited that right now we are working on increasing partnerships. And today I would like to share with you all a principle that we base everything on. It's called Yanama. In my indigenous language, it means that we work together, both the youth and the leaders from a community. They come together and create sustainable solutions. So I want you all to practice this principle, because that's the only way that we can ensure sustainable solutions and solutions that can remain generations to come. Thank you.
Super incredible. Thank you so much for that, Tanya. The next track is really, really fundamental to this process of transformation. It highlights the urgent need for all of us to advocate for adequate and sustainable financing matched to countries' needs, and to cover equity and efficiency of spending for and on education. I'm pleased and honored now to call up the last of our young contributors, Rania Diab, who is a 26-year-old German expat based in Paris. Rania has degrees in law and humanitarian organization management. She's also part of the Plan International France, which focuses on a program that advocates for children's rights and equality for girls around the world. Please join me now to welcome Rania Diab to present on her innovative idea.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Rania Diab, and I am the daughter of a Moroccan immigrant and a Palestinian refugee. I was born and I grew up in Germany, where I had the chance to get a high-quality education, including university degrees in law and humanitarian action from Germany and from France, and all of that for free. Now, I'm absolutely aware that this is great luck and a dream for millions of children from all over the world who dream of solely setting a foot inside a classroom just once in their lives. So this is why I became a GPE youth leader and a Plan International youth ambassador to advocate for gender equality and the right to education for all. So recently, not even 2 weeks ago, the United Nations study by Education Cannot Wait came out, finding that over 222 million children from all over the world are currently having their education cruelly interrupted. And almost 80 million have dropped out of school entirely. They're in urgent need for educational help and did not get the chance to have access to a good quality education. So this is why we need massive and sustainable education financing to be able to face these crises. And because the aim of Sustainable Development Goal 4 is that every child should have the chance to get a good quality education, just like I did. But we are facing huge challenges. COVID has wiped out 20 years of education gates. And even before COVID hit, the world has already had a $200 billion gap in the funds needed to achieve the goals of SDG 4. So this means we cannot carry on with business as usual. Today I want to share with you 3 areas where we need leaders to step up. And these are not just my views. I am one of over 40 GPE youth leaders from around the world, and we are campaigning together for all governments to step up education financing. So firstly, governments need to protect and increase domestic financing to education. This is the money governments spend from their own national budgets for education, and it makes up the majority of resources for education. With global food prices and the cost of living increasing, we cannot afford to cut the education budgets now, because an educated population is a country's most valuable resource to meet the challenges of an uncertain future. Secondly, donor countries need to keep their promises. They need to reach the 0.7 target to aid and prioritize education. Too often, university scholarships are listed as aid to education. But these investments are not supporting the children left behind. We need to target the most marginalized learners and therefore fully fund GPE. And last but not least, we must be innovative. That means looking at non-traditional donors and the private sector. Just like GPE's multiplier that provides $1 in grant funding for each $3 or more in funding mobilized. Since 2018, this has already unlocked more than $1.5 billion in new resources to the education sector. So this is why I am addressing the decision makers present at this event. The suffering of hundreds of millions of children could be reversed by one simple decision, and that is by having a bigger budget for global education. You can use your name, your power, your signature to make this happen. By once again, increasing domestic financing, keeping our promise by fully funding GPE, and by investing in innovative financing techniques. Thank you so much for your attention.
I think it's clear most people here agree with you. Thank you so much, Shania. As we draw closer to the end of this amazing session, you may be aware that we have an ongoing campaign asking youth how they would transform education. As part of this campaign, we are pleased to now showcase some of the ideas that have already come through and compiled in video.
My name is Temilade Salami. I'm 24 years old. I currently live in the United Kingdom. Transforming education means empowering learners and preparing them for the future of work and planetary sustainability by mainstreaming education for sustainable development into our curricula. Education for sustainable development gives learners the values, skills, and agency to address the interconnected global challenges in the world. So it is very important that we make our curricula fit for the future of work so as to empower young people to be agents of change.
Hello, my name is Cody Freeman. I'm 30 years old and I'm here in Bangkok, Thailand. Transforming education means creating a world where LGBTQI+ youth are free. And we do that by having an inclusive curriculum, building spaces free from violence, bullying, and discrimination, and fostering networks of parents, teachers, admin, and policymakers in order to cultivate better mental health and a greater sense of belonging.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Coralie, j'ai 27 ans et je vis en France.
Hello, I'm Coralie. I'm 27 and I live in France. Today, knowledge is accessible all over the place because of the internet, and so school has to offer us more than that. We need social skills. We need to learn about values regardless of which direction we go into. I'm talking about inclusion. I'm talking about resilience, all of the things that can help us to become the best versions of ourselves, to learn how to cooperate better for the benefit of all. And that's why I'm going to be creating workshops on this to focus on changing curricula. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Niall Deng. I'm a South Sudanese refugee, writer, and community activist. I spent 11 years in the Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya and I now attend college in Canada. For young refugees like myself, education is the most powerful tool that we can use to secure a more full and brighter future, not just for ourselves and for our communities. As we build momentum toward the Transforming Education Summit and ensuring that we achieve SDG 4 by 2030, let's commit to leaving no child behind and ensure that every child everywhere can have access to safe and quality education. Education is hope, empowerment, and progress. For every child, everywhere, a chance to learn. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Joan. I am 13 years old. I am Korean, but I live in Tunisia. I am a homeschooler. So, how do I study at home in Tunisia? Well, I'm going to talk about the digital education. The cool thing about it is that people like me can access any resources if there's an internet. Thanks to digital apps, I can study with friends from other continents.
Hello, my name is Veronica Bella Hingis. People call me Bella. I would like to discuss teachers and the teaching profession. As a math teacher, I'm aware that to educate students, you design human beings. Right now, students are learners, but in the future, they are leaders, executives, professionals, or more. So it's important for them to develop learning agility. We must help them to prepare it and to improve that. How? By guiding them how to learn, adapt, unlearn, and relearn.
Pour pouvoir transformer l'éducation,
To change education, to transform education, we have to make sure that our schools are protected against the threat of climate change. Extreme weather events, cyclones are a constant threat for all learning environments, and in particular in small island developing states. I request of you today to take action here and now for the children of tomorrow so that they can go to school every day and make sure that they are protected and in good health.
Weren't those great? I think they deserve a round of applause. Thank you. In an ever-growing and increasingly youthful world, we ought to provide more space for young people to not just be present, but to lead. Listening to these ideas has showcased the immense capacity young people have. I am left hopeful. Hopeful because I'm certain that with these young people leading in the education space, we can and will be able to overcome the multiple crises we are faced with. Transformation begins in each and every one of our hearts and our minds. Thereafter, moving to our families, communities, and the world over. Today, I can safely say that my heart and my entire being is committed to this path with all of these brilliant, young, and bold leaders, finding ways forward in solidarity, in dialogue, and in fellowship. To quote Mandela again, let me say, it is not beyond our power to create a world in which all children have access to a good education. Those who don't believe this have small imaginations. Close quote. Standing here today, I'm hopeful that we will not simply imagine transformation happening, but actively work and agitate as we, as a collective, achieve it. From Gaza, Lucina, to Elisha, from Monte Verde, Kashmir, and Kabul. Let courage and hope rise with us today and every day forward until we achieve our goal of an equal, transformed, decolonized education. Thank you so much.
Wow, these young people have shared what transforming education means to them. Now it's time for the policymakers to support these young people and help scale their impact. Now I have the pleasure to introduce the next panel, which will focus on gender transformative education. I invite to the stage the participants for the session.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I think we are going to be your caffeine hit for the afternoon, and we're excited to do that. I am Antara Ganguly. I am the director of the Angai Secretariat, and you see on the screen behind us something that Angai works on along with our partners, gender transformative education, which is what this session is about. And I'm really, really excited to do this session together with my sister, Ashley Bennett. She is part of Angai and the Transform Educators Network that Angai hosts. Over to you, Ashley.
Good afternoon, everyone. Imagine change. Imagine a shift so big that creators spring a new day with bright smiles and backpacks filled with possibilities. Let's backtrack to what first began as hope to transform education. Imagine transformation, rooted in ending stereotypes, rooted in care and love, rooted in equality, and justice. But guess what? We don't have to imagine anymore, because here is change. Here is transformation. Here is gender transformative education.
We now want to invite onto stage our comrades and colleagues who will join us for this session. I invite the Deputy Executive Director of UNFPA, Ms. Diane Keta, I hope I'm saying her name all right, and Ishan.
And I now bring on stage Ms. Naharu, who is the Director for Planning for the Ministry of Education in Honduras. El Salvador.
Over there.
Yes. And Diana Ayala, a GP youth leader from Honduras.
So Angai and Transform Education, we work very closely together with many of our partners, including UNICEF and Plan International, amongst others, and GPE, on really putting on the table and defining what is gender transformative education. One thing we were talking about earlier is everyone is talking about gender transformative education. We love that. But does everyone love what gender transformative education actually means? So we're going to dig into that today and have a really good discussion on that.
My name is Ashley Bennett, and I am the co-coordinator for Transform Education, a young feminist coalition that's being hosted by Angai, and I will also be a co-moderator for this session. This event is a joint effort from the Global Partnership for Education, Angai, Plan International, Transform Education, and UNICEF. Today we will be exploring gender transformative education, and through a series of intergenerational dialogues, our panelists will be taking on the common myths and misconceptions that surround this concept and challenging them with evidence, which we know is very important. Their lived experiences and what can be achieved when we work together.
Now, everybody who's here in Paris for TES doesn't need to be converted on the power of education. We're here because we believe in the power of education. And education largely seems to mean today numeracy and literacy, the ability to read and count. However, what we have not made as much headway on is the power of education to achieve gender equality. And I will submit that there isn't yet a country in the world anywhere that has really fully exploited the potential of the education system to do that.
And this is exactly why we need education that is gender transformative. Because gender transformative education, it utilizes all parts of the education system. So you can think about it and think about all the moving parts, every part of the education system, and all of its stakeholders to transform harmful stereotypes, norms, and practices for gender equality. It challenges power relations and raises critical consciousness about the root causes of inequality and systems of oppression.
So this is really related to everything that's happening in the world today. It's related to the war in Ukraine. It's related to the many crises happening in Syria, in Yemen, in Turkey. It's related to the backlash against rights that are happening in many countries around the world. So what is gender transformative education? Is it really just about empowering girls and women? It is not. Gender transformative education is really about freeing children from those harmful norms that we have grown up with and that we unintentionally pass on to them. So this is very much about boys. This is about helping boys not feel that they have to grow up to be powerful, often violent men who control the thinking and the work of other people, women, girls, and people of all genders.
And during this discussion, whilst we are on stage, we also want to hear from you because we want to know how we can also make that happen collectively. So for those who are attending in person, for those of you who are joining us online, please submit your questions to our panel through the Slido poll, which should come up soon. So you would see the code there that you can submit your questions. So even if you're in the audience, if you're online, you can submit your questions here and join the conversation.
So something we hear a lot at ANGA is, why are we talking about gender transformative education? We've basically achieved gender parity. Now there are a couple of things to unpack here. First, gender parity simply means that you have the same number of girls and boys, and it doesn't count children of other genders, in a classroom or in a school. So if you look at something like gross enrollment, for example, it literally is just a measure of what percentage of children in a catchment area as defined by a census are actually in a school. So to say that gender parity is the same as gender equality is actually incorrect. It's the first step towards achieving gender equality. You can have gender parity in a school where children are experiencing massive gender inequality, where there is a lot of gender-based violence, and where there is no gender-responsive teaching at all. Gender parity is a step to get there, but to say that gender parity measures gender inequality is a little bit like being in a thunderstorm, taking out a teaspoon and saying, here, I've got water in my teaspoon, I'm measuring the thunderstorm. You're getting a little bit of it, but a very little bit of it. As an example, there's evidence to show that girls have better learning outcomes than boys in many situations. Let's look at what that really means. This means that for those children who go to school, girls often do have better learning outcomes than boys in some countries. But we're not looking at the learning outcomes of the girls and boys who are not in school. So in some countries, the number of in-school children is less than 40%. So if you're measuring the learning of 37% of children in the country, are you really able to say something about gender gaps in learning? And then if you're not looking at gender equality, what you're not picking up is that for those out-of-school children, are girls learning the same as boys? If you give an out-of-school girl and an out-of-school boy a smartphone, will that out-of-school girl pick up and start working on that smartphone as comfortably as the boy? Now, Ashley, you coordinate a global network of young feminist activists and organizations, and you work very much as a CSE educator as well. What are some of the misconceptions you've come across on this issue?
Thank you so much for that question and for your previous intervention. As a CSE educator and young persons, I hear a lot of misconceptions as it relates to transforming education, particularly when it comes to talking about inclusive classrooms and learning material. And people I have come into contact with are often of the belief that using language that is rooted in gender stereotypes and not discussing issues such as consent or safer sex will protect children, when ultimately it excludes learners like me, who do not fit those gender stereotypes and are unable to see themselves represented in the classroom. In addition, a lack of quality CSE, and I say quality because I know sometimes we get watered down curriculum for CSE, which doesn't really do the job. But quality CSE really covers, what we need to learn about ourselves, to feel confident in our bodies, and to interact with the world around us. CSE equips young people with accurate and relevant information to understand and question social norms and practices concerning sexuality, gender equality, and relationships, and contribute positively to society. So integrating CSE into national curricula is a crucial component of gender transformative education, and to promote quality education, health, and well-being for children and youth in all their diversity. And if we're not doing that, we aren't fulfilling that goal.
Thank you so much for that, Ashley, and thank you for putting in the word quality. I think all of us struggle to make sure that we're not just ticking boxes in our work, but that there's real meaning behind that. Ashley, I'll turn it back to you to bring in our colleagues into the discussion.
Welcome, you both. I'm really excited to have this conversation where we're going to delve into gender transformative education in early years, which I'm sure we're going to learn so much from lived experiences and really practical information. So we will now introduce our next intergenerational discussion with Ms. Najarro, Director for Planning for the Ministry of Education in El Salvador, and Diana Ayala, a GP youth leader from Honduras. So I'm beginning with you, Ms. Najarro. We often hear that gender transformative education cannot be done in early years, yet El Salvador's new partnership compact with the Global Partnership for Education has a really strong focus on gender equality in early years of education. Can you challenge this misconception by sharing more about this process and what you are trying to achieve?
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to say thanks for being here, for being part of this experience and sharing with you all the process that we have back in El Salvador. I have to translate to Spanish now because it's much easier for me to say the ideas and all the work we have done for the past few years. So, la pregunta.
The question that we have been asking ourselves, having heard the conversation in the previous panel amongst the youth, is what are we here for? What do we want to achieve? We are the decision makers. And so what are the decisions that we're going to be taking? What are the changes? The structural changes that we would like to introduce into an educational system, because we do believe that these changes can be made through education. We've heard that a gender focus is something can be a driver that cuts across all areas, but it's not just a question of teaching materials or in teaching practices of educators themselves. We want further changes. We want clear policies, concise policies when it comes to the use of data. For example, when we look at the repeat rates, they're higher amongst girls. When we look at success rates, it's higher for boys. When we look at dropout rates, voluntarily or involuntary because of girls under the age of 17 getting pregnant with an unwanted pregnancy, well, we can see that the gap is even greater. The GPE process that El Salvador is engaged in, and that has been going alongside a government nationwide plan for developing education in keeping with the SDGs. This is a process that is extremely interesting, where we have learned so much alongside GPE, along with other countries who've shared their experiences with us. We see that the evidence goes beyond just a narrow set of data. Studies give us a snapshot of a baseline in some cases, and we see that, again, going back to pregnant girls who have to drop out of school early, they never come back for a variety of different reasons, so they never get back into the education system. So policies have to be much more proactive. They have to be designed in such a way that they're going to transform the educational system itself. And these are decisions that should be made here and now. Our institutional reform plan in El Salvador, beyond quality learning experiences and teacher training, and beyond safe environments where there can be a great difference between a health center for girls that is friendly and safe, something where people can learn and feel safe and in comfort. So I will wrap up my comments now and look forward to any questions that spring up during our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the commitment that you all are engaging in to ensure that, beyond the classroom, that there are policies that can really ensure that girls stay in school. Because I think that's an issue that affects a lot of countries where girls, they become pregnant and they're unable to return to the classroom. And that just exacerbates several issues. We talk about poverty, right? And then employment and a lot of things like that. So I'm really happy that you are doing that work and also have the support of GPE. I now pass to you, Diana. People might think that it is not appropriate to talk about gender and gender norms when it comes to young children, or to really break down gender stereotypes from an early age. Can you share about what you have learned from your work on school-related gender-based violence and why this is so important?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So thank you for that question, and I'm also happy to be here with Mrs. Najarro because I'm Salvadorian also. Really? Yes, I was born in El Salvador, and I lived there until I was 12 years old. So I'm so happy to have my double nationality and know that my native country is actually doing great work with GPE. I'm so emotional right now. So thank you. So to answer the question, I think that gender transformative education, it's important to break down negative stereotypes that are built in the mind of little kids. Since they're very little, these stereotypes are in their minds, and they come from different places. They come from schools, they come from even their families, you know, the community where they grow up, the people that they relate, the society where they are growing up, you know, having these negative stereotypes, which later on lead to gender-based violence. And this violence threats the lives of the kids in the way that they're not able to go to school anymore because nothing is happening inside the learning centers, because we don't have trained teachers also as well, that they know how to, you know, achieve and approach a better learning for girls and how to manage these things and have these policies that will back up also the work of teachers and that will back up girls and boys as well, because boys also suffer from violence in schools, not only girls. So I think that if we have this gender transformative approach, we can lead to successful education and a quality education in our countries. And I also think that violence in and around the schools is a global issue with devastating consequences, like kids dropping school. And in Honduras, we've been working with teachers, with civil society, with youth, engaging all together in intersectional work to actually know that gender is not only talking about girls and boys, it's not only having inclusive language, it's not only about that. It's about, like Mrs. Najarro said, making policies that are like strong and that they're radical, you know, bringing actual changes to the countries. It's like, for example, I can share, it's like, you know, sometimes in school we have boys that are hitting girls and we're telling them, no, it's okay because he likes you, and that's a way of showing love. And then they're having this in their mind, the girls, that, oh no, it's okay to receive violence because that's how boys show affection and love. And then they're having this in their mind and growing up, and I even grew up in a culture that it's teaching you that you have to serve men and that men are to be served, and that's the right thing to do. And then you have to drop your dreams and everything you want to do because you have to attend home. And that shouldn't be like put onto you, because women can do everything they want. And like these are like specific stereotypes that are built in girls' mind that violence is okay because that's a way of showing love, and that needs to stop, because violence is not a way of love in any form. And I think that addressing gender norms in young children also means addressing gender norms everywhere. Even in ministries, we have to have parity in ministries, having more women in decision-making places, having more girls to know that they can actually have a voice and that they will achieve everything that they want. So through GPEs, with KICS project and EOL, we've been working a lot with Foro Dakar, which is my national coalition, trying to talk to teachers and also try to change attitudes that are, like we mentioned before. We have to change, yes, policies, be radical and have changes in the country, but we also have to start from very top to very bottom, like changing these attitudes in teacher, and they understanding that violence is not okay and that they have to respect the rights of boys and girls, and that gender transformative education, it's a way of achieving a more successful country and having better quality of life for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Diana, and I'm really happy that you really showed the role gender plays in gender-based violence, because we all know gender is a social construct, and if we can make it as a society, we can definitely break it. It will just take some time. But just a final question to you both, and I think this is really great alignment because you being from El Salvador and you all are doing work at different levels. So just in a few words, you know, when it comes to your work and your leadership, how important it is to you to have that intergenerational partnership, but also if you can just share like one small example as to how you engage in that.
Okay. Thank you for that question. In El Salvador, we have a lot of experience working, for example, with the GPE. We have the local group from the society, and this is making a big difference between working alone, just the Ministry of Education, making policies directly saying what they want to do or how they would like to be done, and it's different from all the process that we have, for example, with the compact. The compact means that we have to agree to have consensus between the level of the government, between teachers, and also with the society.
Well, I think two main things are very important. One is financing, and I will continue saying this. Financing education is the best way that we have to achieve. I know education it's not based on not teaching kids to have money, but we need money to fund education. We need money to, you know, achieve things, have better policies, engage civil society. And the other thing is that, like she was mentioning, we have to work intersectionally, having civil society engage in actually knowing what the policies are. What are the policies that we have in the country? How are we achieving the SDG 4 or any other things in education? So I think that working between different sectors is very important to not only be like, you know, monitoring governments, but also supporting them and working together to achieve things. Thank you.
Thank you both, and I feel so inspired. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I pass it over to you, Antara.
I have so many follow-up questions for both of you. But let's now turn to, I hope I'm saying your name right, Dienekata? And Ishan, I don't know your last name. Ishan Shah. We are excited to hear from you more on your work on gender transformative education and your vision for gender transformative education. Ishan, let me start with you. A common misconception is that country-level processes around education are bureaucratic, very high level, difficult to get into, and so not exactly the right place for young people. I think you have done things differently, and I'd love to hear from you on that. And then, very importantly, I would love to hear your reflections on the important role of men and boys in supporting gender equality and in gender transformative education.
Thank you very much. Firstly, like sort of fellow youth colleagues have done previously, I'd like to recognize my privilege of being here today. There are so many youth voices who couldn't make it for various reasons, most notably the visa issues, which is sort of a big barrier towards youth participation, accessibility to conferences like this. But I think it's important to ground ourselves a bit, have a bit of a reality check, because I think some of us can get a bit sort of looped up in being in Paris, you know, in a conference like this. But really, we're in an education crisis, aren't we? And as with many other issues that we face today, whether it's climate change or conflict or trafficking in persons, gender-based violence, it's women and girls who are really disproportionately impacted, right? And yet, women and girls and youth, but particularly women and girls, are on the front lines, they're leading these efforts. And yet they're not meaningfully included. And we talk a lot about meaningful participation of young people. We throw these words around, but what does it actually mean? And so last year, during the Generation Equality Forums, youth co-authored the Young Feminist Manifesto, which is a beautiful document, a very comprehensive document on how we can really concretize and really implement meaningful youth participation. And it happens under the three principles of co-leadership, co-creation, and co-ownership. And this means bringing young people into decision-making spaces and into efforts at all levels, at the grassroots levels, within NGOs and civil society organizations, but also at the international levels, within governments, within ministries, you know, making sure that they're really at the heart of everything that we do. This also means funding, as you mentioned, funding. but accessible and flexible funding for youth networks, for individual youths, and for youth collectives and organizations who are really on the front lines driving the change, because that's where the actions are happening on the grassroots level. And education is so important because education is a tool to progress gender equality, and gender equality is a tool to progress quality education. That's really important to remember. You know, the SDG round, so there's the symbol, it's a circle. All of these SDGs are interconnected, and we cannot just target one and say, you know, we've done it. We have to achieve all 17, and that can only be done through multi-stakeholder and intergenerational action, and that means all stakeholders working together, and that's exactly what we need, because we're seeing young people on the front lines already driving the change, but we need that political and corporate will to act, to fund youth, to resource youth for capacity building, to make sure that our voices are being meaningfully included. You know, we live in a world that is built and dominated by men. You know, I'm not sure how many of people here identify themselves as men, but we reap the benefits, and we go about our lives often, you know, not thinking how much how much the patriarchy benefits us, right? And so we really need to think about gender inequality as a structural issue. You know, we may have not picked up the tools to build the patriarchy ourselves, but that doesn't mean that we can't work to dismantle it now and to really break it down and to ensure that women and girls are being placed at the decision-making center. So I invite all the people here who identify as men to stand up, if that's okay with you. All the men in the room, could you stand up? Now, I invite you all to commit to a lifelong journey of learning, of listening to women and girls. And if you don't want to, then please do feel free to sit down. But I think you'll get some youth activists running your way straight away. I invite you to remain standing if you really commit to recognize the power that you hold, whether that's in the household, in your place of work, in the government you may be working in. I invite you to commit to gender equality, to commit to quality education, to listening to women and girls and placing their voices at the center of all your efforts. Recognize your power and use it to dismantle the very structures that are disproportionately impacting and harming women and girls. We live in a world dominated and run by us, and it is our duty now, as women and girls have been asking for generations now, to really stand up and fight for gender equality. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Irfaan. That was rousing and great to see all the allies we have in the room who will work with us. Madame Ketta, I will now turn to you. What are your thoughts on gender transformative education? And how can gender transformative education help us achieve gender equality? And how can young people really take leadership on this?
Thank you so very much for that question. But please allow me to congratulate my young fellow here for his powerful, powerful initiative. Now I'm going to turn into French, if you allow me.
I would like to start where the lady from El Salvador left off. Namely, what are the decisions that governments should take when it comes to education? What are the changes to be introduced into the system in order that it truly be transformative in terms of gender, in terms of equality? Education is a tremendous force to change cultures. In the United Nations Fund for Population, we had a session on gender violence, but imagine a transformative education wherein a young girl can fearlessly move from her classroom to her toilet, menstruate without shame, return home, and explain to her mother what she learned at school. So what we call gender transformative really amounts to combining the role of education with the role of the immediately surrounding society. Parents in particular, sometimes parents don't really have contact with the school except when their child is recalcitrant. So how can the parents and the rest of the society be involved in the educative process as well? And that all has to do with culture, with the surrounding culture. And that's really the only chance that one has in such a forum as this one, which is extraordinary, to have an intergenerational dialogue. But young people, of course, well, there are many different levels. I mean, there are those who are barely walking, there's the middle age, and there are the older adolescents, if you will. And you need also to have that transformation running through the different cohorts of young people at different ages. And when we talk about this digital era today, it is also necessary that young people contribute to the education of their parents. There are certain ideas, there are certain concepts that are better vehiculated by young people than by older people, and I think that that is truly transformative. Let's look at the COVID period, which is now coming to an end. Young people were absolutely essential for education to continue out there in the field. Without young people, there would have been no education. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. A follow-up question, since you brought up digital platforms, and you're right, all of us engage on this, right? I mean, the first time my mother sent me an email when I was in college, she sent me blank email after blank email. And now she finds the most interesting Instagram posts on feminism and sends them to me. There is a massive digital gender gap. And it's something that we are concerned is not being taken up at the highest level. So as we move to remote learning, we take forward of the gains of remote learning through COVID, we are very nervous that this is going to, A, leave behind the most marginalized children who do not have access to electricity. Forget about smartphones and laptops. But B, it's just going to exacerbate the digital inequality between girls and boys. I would love to hear from all of you on how does this fit in? On one hand, this is an exciting new, it could truly be an equalizer, right? Because it can have AI, it can simultaneously translate. Technology can really bring people together. It doesn't care what you look like. It doesn't care about your skin color. But then on the other hand, the haves are getting it before the have-nots, especially on gender. I would love to, any of you who would like to respond, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Si me lo permite, vuelvo al español.
If you'll allow me, I'll go back to speaking Spanish. Public policy obviously needs to be standardized in some way, to go from one government to another, and in this way to be able to guarantee that there will be funding for education and that these policies be implemented. However, we know that in some countries that's not what happens. In the case of El Salvador, there is a decided, let's say, a decided decision that's a bit redundant right now to give laptops to students because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We needed to step up these processes of virtual teaching and transform teaching into platforms that could be differentiated between virtual and what we might call online or existing in other forms like manuals for students. And so what's happening is that we're giving computing equipment to small children. Even before third grade, we're giving them tablets with internet service and with programs already loaded. And then starting in 4th grade up until the 2nd year of high school, that's more middle school for us in El Salvador, we're giving them laptops. And one way of having the equality we want to have between boys and girls is using these computational abilities that give them access to internet, for instance.
Let me take just a quick example to make it simple. I think government, I love what the Senora said, because government need to take action. Virtual study allow a young girl who is pregnant to continue studying when she's kicked out of school. As simple as that. Just a simple thing to be talking about. 1 out of 4 girls are either victim of violence or get pregnant. So I think that this could be a way to keep them, to give them the chance to continue. I'll stop there.
That's very true. There is, however, data showing that and this is from Asia and the Pacific, which is higher on digital adoption by children and young people than other regions of the world. 47% of adolescent boys utilize smartphones, not even own smartphones, utilize, versus 27% of girls. What can education ministries do to solve this? What would you like to see, Diana and Ishan? Diana or Diana? Diana. What would you like to see happen to make sure that when a girl picks up a smartphone, she knows exactly what to do, just as when a boy picks up a smartphone?
Yes, so I think that it's very important to understand that it's not only just providing the equipment or the materials or the technology, it's also providing the teaching of how to use these equipments. So I think that it's almost necessary to look for applications or ways to have technology that is adapted to, for example, people with disabilities, because we tend to forget about this sector a lot of times. We have computers, we have laptops, we have textbooks that are virtual, but what's happening with people that are not able to hear? What's happening to people that are not able to see? So we have to include them also in the technology plans that we have and not letting them out, because it happens most of the time. And as well with the indigenous groups, because we tend to, for example, in Honduras, we try them to understand and speak in Spanish because that's the main language of the country, but they have their own language also, and we have to respect cultures. We have to respect their beliefs, their language, what they do, everything that they are, because it's part of them, and we can't forget about that. I'm Honduran, but I'm also Salvadorian, and I love my culture as well. So I think that technology should be by hand. Gender transformative education, it's hand by hand with technology. If we create the policies, and if we create in the spaces, and if we fund the way of including everyone in gender transformative education, include everyone in, technology, not only having technology for one sector, but all should be included in this. And we have to have the teachers trained to know how to deal with technology, because it's not only kids suffering from lack of technology, of the digital divide, it's also teachers and educators that are not having these tools and that are not understanding how to use them as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the panel for really... Sure, go ahead.
I can see the timer going off. I just want to say that the people who don't have access, the young people who don't have access to the technology right now are going to be excluded from the conversations that we're having at this summit. Many ministers and government delegations are present today. There's a lot of youth in the room from various regions and various countries who are ready to speak to you, to influence the ministerial declaration that's going to happen tomorrow. And also we have, as National Gender Youth Advocates, UN Women, we have our youth recommendations, so come and find us and we will give them to you. This will really place gender equality at the center of the declarations that are being published as a result of this summit. But thank you.
Thank you all so much for really bringing to the forefront gender transformative education for us to achieve gender equality. So at this point, just have time for one final question that we got from the audience. We got really great questions, but we're just going to take one because of time. Do you think it's possible to promote gender transformative education in emergencies? Quick, short responses.
Absolutely yes.
I'm going to add a question to that, especially for colleagues from ministries. What does gender parity at ministries of education look like? What's your vision? What do you want to see for gender parity, gender equality in ministries of education?
I really would like to see what parity means, 50-50, but that's not possible because a lot of women don't have the preparation. They don't go to school. They even don't finish secondary education. So we are less women prepared at the university level than men. And what I would like to see is more women finish tertiary education. That's what I would like to see.
Based on your prior experience, what would you like to see? What's your dream for gender equality in Ministry of Education?
Well, like my past, my dream is that every young woman, every young girl goes to school together, feeling safe, both of them, that they are paritarian, that they should work together, grow up together, so that they can support each other for their family lives. And that is very, very important, I think. And just like Diana said, it is important, all those categories that exist, but there are so many. We are just finishing the Pride Month now. In New York, it was just fantastic. Being inclusive and tolerant, that's what I want gender transformative to look like and to mean for all of us. Thank you.
I don't think we can conclude with a better sentence. This is our vision and our dream as transforming education and ANGAI and UNICEF and PLAN. Thank you for that beautiful vision. We believe gender equality can only be intersectional, can only be led by the most vulnerable people on the ground who are experiencing the barriers far more powerfully than those of us sitting here, which is a point that Ishan also brought up. So on that note, thank you very much. Thank you for listening. And thank you to our wonderful panel. I think we can give them a round of applause. I would now like to invite on stage, is she here? Oh, she's here remotely. We have had a young feminist illustrator draw our session as she has heard it. Her name is Heather, and this is what she drew on our panel.
Je vous remercie pour cette intervention.
Thank you very much for that contribution, and I think it's time for a little break and move around. We'll have some music, and I'll ask you to get up and move, please.
Stand up, and please stand up and show your best moves in a way to get a little bit more energy. And I hope you can get inspired by these amazing dancers. So please stand up, everyone. Go ahead. And I hope you can recognize this song.
Alors, tu ne te sens pas mieux?
So, does everyone feel better? Right. Then we'll go on to a session that's also going to require you to participate, because everyone will need to share how we can undertake this urgent mission, which is transforming education. That's why we're here today, giving young people a role.
I stand before you. Do you see me? I cry in front of you. Do you see me? I scream and bang and pound on the walls around me. Do you see me? I do something that you don't like and all of a sudden I'm violent. Now you see me. You're always gonna feel safe in school, seen in school and heard in school. So why do I feel invisible and mute? I was taught from young that you've got to be the smartest so that you stay in their eyes, like the ink you use to write to rebuke their demise. Scanning the mark scheme from 1 to 9, low to high. And they were surprised to see the predicted and achieved 9s. And yet I stand before you, stained and conflicted. My brothers and sisters holding a hatred for a system that they couldn't beat. A thug, a gang, don't be so aggressive. No surprise when you see the grade 3 in their GCSEs. Playing with their future and their lives because you wouldn't listen. Ria, why do you aim so high? Because it's built in me. Because for years I saw education was the only way for me. Because it put my mom's heart at peace. To know her child would push through a system that was built against me. I stand here and feel like an anomaly. Among my kin with music running through their veins, who felt like in the system their minds weren't safe. To be free, wishing the C in education meant creativity.
Thank you. So give me a hug. That was amazing. Oh my gosh, so much.
Can we have one more for Ria?
Round of applause, please.
One more round of applause for
Wow.
Ria.
So now we have to get to know you. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Rivera. I am 17 and I'm from Northwest London. I'm a singer, songwriter, and poet.
That was amazing.
Ria, fresh off the Eurostar today, has come to perform for us. We're so happy that she was able to make it. One thing I wanted to ask you about that poem, I heard a reference to your mum, who I happen to know is a teacher.
Yeah.
So you grew up with an English teacher as your mum?
Yeah.
How was that?
My mum always pushed, like, English was the most important thing. Like, you need to make sure that you get a really high grade in English, but she also left room for, like, me and my sister to be creative in what we did. So, like, I do music and my sister does art. So, yeah.
How does it make you feel to express yourself, to be at UNESCO and to express yourself in this way, and what does it do for you?
Well, firstly, I feel quite proud of myself, but also it feels good to be able to speak about my experience in education, but also the experience of my peers, which is very different to my own.
We loved it. Can I just say, backstage before this, what none of you saw was Ayan gave a pep talk to Ria, which was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. So shout out to you for that. That was very nice. Two women looking out for each other. Love to see it. So, Ayan, you introduce yourself now. Some people have already seen you this morning.
So, from the poem, so that's my poetry sister. Definitely have to do that. So my name's Ayan Saeed. I'm the founder of Voicing Voices, and I'm here representing education above all in Qatar. So shout out to my team there.
Education above all in the house. And I am Jack Davies. I work for World's Largest Lesson. And our whole mission is about the SDGs in learning. And this year, our theme is SDG 4, which is what brings us here today. So, what are we doing? What are we doing here today? It's going to be an interactive session, okay? So security, if you could just lock the doors at the back, there will be no escaping. Shortly, we will be asking people in the audience to respond to 2 questions. And we're also going to be inviting all the people online. I've looked up at the screen as if the online world lives there. They will be joining in through this Mentimeter, as can all of you guys in here in the room. So there's been some talk already at Transforming Education Pre-Summit about digital literacy skills and how vital they are. I think this is going to be a test of how far we have to go in this room. Either scan the QR code or go to www.menti.com, enter the code 53247875, and you'll be able to interact with the questions we ask. Your words will appear on the big screen, and so will the words of all the people who are watching around the world, which is very exciting. So I'll give you 1 more minute to do that, and then we're going to go into the first question, which will be a little experiment, a warm-up. That code, 53247875. Okay, I think we're all online. Can we have the next slide, please? So this is just a chance for all of you guys to share where you're from in the world. Simple as that. So I'd love to see up on the board all of the countries.
Yes.
Sweden.
UK, that will be my mum. Nice to hear you joining us, mum. Oh my goodness, there's so many words flying onto this screen already. We've got France, Portugal, Uganda, Latvia, China. This is really hard to read. Colombia.
Jamaica. All right, we've got the islands in.
Ayan's a fan of Jamaica in the house.
Woo, there you go.
Holla. Yeah, this is the kind of thing we want. We want whooping, we want hollering. So while these words are flying onto the screen, a very short moment of reflection. You've all come here, you've expended a lot of energy, you've done a lot of listening, absorbing, thinking about the theme of transforming education. So this session is going to be a chance to reflect on that, share your thoughts, share with each other in the room, make connections, and think about why we're all here. And one fact that I wanted to share with you, which really stuck with me preparing for this event, is that we've got more than 140 education ministers who will be a part of this summit in some form or other over the next 3 days, which I think is pretty incredible. In fact, should we have a little round of applause for their excellencies who are joining us?
Woo!
140, so...
That's 140 ways to change things, right?
I love it. So all of us gathered here, we know why we're here. We really believe in the power of education, the power of education to change the world, the limitless power that education has. Amina Mohammed said today, the DSG, Deputy Secretary General of the UN, said, "We know the whys, we know the hows. Now it's about building a movement to make it happen." And then she quoted the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, who said, "And we need to do that beginning yesterday." So it's all about urgency and getting things done. And I just want to say thank you to everyone in the room who's here trying to make it happen. We're going to take the fire back to our communities. And that's what the next question is going to be all about. So if we could display question 1 on the screen. And Ria, what is question 1?
So the first question is, if you could reinvent one thing about education, what would it be?
And we will be coming into the crowd to hear answers. We want to keep them really short and snappy. People online and in the room, you can share your short responses via the screen there. You can feel free to start getting them in now already. Ayan and Ria are going to start going into the crowd to get your responses. But before you do, let's model it for everyone. So, Ria, I'm going to start with you. If you could reinvent one thing about education, what would it be?
I think I would make, bigger spaces for young people to be creative so that they can flourish a bit more. Because it's very academic, it's very much like maths and English, that's what you need, but you need spaces for music and art and other creative arts.
So true, and you're living proof of that here today. Ayan.
Given my poem this morning, I would like us to reinvent the decision-making space and table ASAP, please. Thank you.
I love it. And we're going to hear more about Ayan's work a bit later on. For me, I've got 2. One is goal 4.7, education for sustainability. But I've seen a few people who've said that today. So my other reinvention is to bring joy into education as much as possible. Learning how to be joyful, to experience joy. Joy is a radical act. That's us. So hands up in the room. Make life easy for Ayan and Ria. And for Steph, and for Kinvara, who are at the back. We have a hand.
We've already got, and we've got the left, the left side is going.
Oh, we've got
one here, I'll count 1,
One
2.
in the middle, one on the left, none on the right currently, or maybe there's one right at the back. Go ahead. And could you stand up, please, so that we can all see you? Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. My answer was freedom to be your most authentic self, because that looks different for everyone, and just having the space to do that can create so much in the world.
All right.
Love it. Have we got someone down there, Ria?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, Ria passes on to Riha, who met earlier on at the session. Riha, if you could stand up.
Yeah, that's so funny. I met someone who's also called Ria. So the Riha and Riha, yes. For me, if we could reinvent how we don't focus on education and learning, but instead focus on love. I think we need more love and aspiring to achieve happiness for every child, and let that be the starting point, because when you're happy, you can learn. And then maybe we don't have to start thinking about radically transforming policies. Maybe it will come anyway, naturally.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Steph, yes.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. The thing that I would invent is to be treating children like autonomous human beings rather than things to be molded and shaped how the adults feel that they should be.
Wow, I love that one.
Another one right on the right side as well.
Oh, we've got one at the back, Kinvara. And could you do a quick intro to yourself when you give your questions so we get to know who you are?
So, can you hear me? Yes? Okay.
Yep, all good.
So, I'm from Portugal. I'm 15 years old. And I think what we could reinvent is actually people's minds. Why? We could just click on a restart button so everyone can think for themselves and have their own ideas, and they hopefully could be more open-minded. And of course, this would make everything way easier, and I don't think education would be an exception.
Love it. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, I see some more hands up. Ayan's mic over here. Yeah, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hermia. I am a university student from Hong Kong. And one thing I could reinvent, I would like to abolish the exam-based approach because I have spent so much time afraid that is not the correct answer and assuming there's only one correct answer. And that really limits creativity and also innovation. And I've spent a long time trying to unlearn that, and I don't want the next generation to spend as much time as me to unlearn that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Having to unlearn parts of your education. Yes, at the back.
Hola, buenas tardes. En este caso creo que...
Hello, good afternoon. I think that in this case, we could talk about having really liberating education, education which promotes children and youth with the spirit of critical thinking and understanding the world and a much broader base of understanding, using criticism and reflection in a framework that has to do with everything concerning inequalities, but to go forward and have big dreams and have a future that's fueled by memory and the history of humanity, and to be able to stride firmly toward that future as the youth of today's humanity.
So much. Thank you for sharing. Okay, we've had a lot of this side of the room. Who's ready with a mic over this side? Yes.
Hello. Hello, I'm Allegra Menderata. I'm from the US and I'm a 20-year-old university student. I would prioritize physical and mental safety in all schools and make it a non-issue because there should be no reason school should be an unsafe place.
Very well said. Thank you.
Two more from here.
Who said that? I heard a voice. Yes, go ahead.
Bien. Merci à tous.
Thank you all. Karim Laurent from the Côte d'Ivoire National Education Council. And for me, transforming education is understanding what people can do to adapt to different subjects, to their times.
Before we go to another person in the crowd, I'd like to just check in with what's happening online. So we've got student governments in education. That's the biggest, so I'm guessing that's been said more than once. Learning through play, one of my favorites as a former play worker. Safe schools, oh, I thought it calmed down, but the internet's come alive again. Creativity and big words, love to see it. Safe schools, emotional intelligence, keep them coming in. I love it when the board is just going wild with people's input. Can we have a hand up? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sarachana. I'm from the United States of America. I'm 22 years old. I just graduated from university, so I went through the whole system. And something I noticed in my education that lacked very deeply is a lack of climate education. I was not properly educated about climate change, and what's terrifying to me as a young person is that we're facing an existential threat to humanity. And 10 years from now, even actually right now, climate change is one of the biggest threats to our very existence. Yet, for some reason, schools throughout the world and curriculum around the world lacks a proper climate education. And something I hope to see from policies and from schools around the world is proper and holistic climate education, because every single member of society, no matter who you are, a teacher, a doctor, an engineer, an artist, everyone needs to contribute to this movement. And that's something I hope to see in education systems around the world.
Thank you so much. Completely agree. Yes, here at the front.
Hi. My name is Veda. I come from Spain, and I work in an education NGO called Entre Culturas. And linking to what the previous colleague mentioned, I would reinvent the spaces we learn and open the walls of public schools and any school, linking to local communities and knowledges and making space into the ecosystems and biodiversity that we are as primary learning spaces, and really valuing our eco-dependency and the local knowledges that should also contribute to schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Eco-dependency, that's a new word for me. I love it. Yes, over here.
Hi, my name's Christopher. I'm a representative of the UN Youth Delegation from Latvia.
I wrote down political engagement because I believe that one of the themes of this summit is to get youth on the decision-making table. I think that the logically prior thing to that is actually teaching the youth to take up those opportunities and to make decisions and to take a clear, show them a clear roadmap of how to access bastions of power and then make decisions for themselves. Thanks.
Oh, I love it. You're foreshadowing our second question there, so we'll come back to that thought. Yes, we have someone at the back. So many hands, I love to see it.
If there is one thing I could reinvent in the modern world for education, is critical thinking, promoting that in schools, allowing people the ability and creative diversity to flourish in schools. I think nowadays there's always a curriculum to follow that kind of generalizes education for everyone, but not everyone has the same mind. We should have education systems that promote people to think in different ways and teaching them the crucial skills that they need for life, and most importantly, the ability to think for themselves.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Yes, in the middle.
Hello, I'm Olivier from the Learning Planet. I'm based in Paris and doing a big alliance with UNESCO. One thing I would change is more cooperation and less competition. More focus on collective success and meaningful collective success rather than individual success in academia. So this would be a basis.
Hi.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My name is Doreen Liomba. I am from Namibia. If I could reinvent anything in education in the modern world, I would prioritize technical and vocational training education in order to promote industry and sustainable development.
Thank you. That one felt like it was inside my own head because I couldn't see where you are, but thank you. Great point made. We'll have two more because then we're going to move on, but I'm loving how many, there's literally hands everywhere.
My name is Ahmed Alabi and I'm from Nigeria.
Okay, we'll come to you next, yes.
My name is Ahmed Alabi and I'm from Nigeria. And if there's anything I want to reinvent, it's collaboration for educational change. And that's by being a piece of a jigsaw puzzle. Education is just like a piece of the jigsaw puzzle. And all we need to do, we don't need to do everything. We just need to be a piece in the life of one child. And that means one person is providing life skills. Somebody is using dance. A teacher is teaching in the classroom. Somebody is providing scholarship for a child in a rural community. By being a piece in the puzzle of one child, we will reinvent education and we will unravel the puzzle that is yet, to be unknown. Because a child can be something in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to have
Hello.
you at the front, and then we're going to go to whoever's at the top, and they can shout without microphone. But first, we'll go to you here. Thank you.
I think that when we understand that we're not living in the world, but rather living with other people, then you understand that it's a win-win situation. The idea isn't that I should win and other people have to lose, but rather that we will take care of each other and bring each other to better situations.
Okay, final person, because you stood up with so much energy. It almost frightened me. And then we'll go to this person who's so desperate that they're standing, about to jump from the railings.
Okay.
And then we will move on. But guys, I love this energy. Thank you so much. Yes. Over to you in the middle.
Okay, I apologize. I want to take a video, so I'll sit for the video. So, hi everyone, my name is Sheikha. I'm Sheikha Al-Marri and I'm from Qatar. If I want to reinvent anything in the education process, I would reinvent the curriculums to be more inclusive when it comes to communities, cultural backgrounds, rather than being based on, foreign policies. And I would focus more on enriching the education experience more than changing people themselves, and prioritizing human rights when it comes to education.
Thank you so much. Okay, finally, and there will be another question, so we'll all have a chance to speak. Up to you at the top, and please talk as loudly as you can.
I don't know if we're going to get a chance.
Woo!
Round of applause. Thank you so much. Ayan and Ria, do you want to come join me back on the stage? Make your way back to the stage, and then we'll come into our second question. Apologies if the translation was a little bit tricky for the person up there because it wasn't mic'd up, but I'm glad we heard the point. And as Ayan returns, just a few more things that people have been saying online. So teachers, obviously such an important role in the whole thing. We have curriculum, another mention for play, humanized, which is a word I love in this conversation, engagement, inquiry, learning. Thank you to everyone engaging online. Thank you, you guys in the room. That was the fire that we all have. That's the reason we're here. I hope all of you were noting who in the room you're going to go and have a conversation with later on today and make those connections. It's on us. We have to take that energy and paint the picture for the rest of the world of this is why education matters. People glaze over. I don't know if you've ever tried to talk to someone, you know, about, oh yeah, I'm really passionate about education. They think about classrooms, they think about their experiences. I don't even know what they think, but their eyes glaze over. If they were in this room, their eyes wouldn't be glazing over. So let's take that passion back with us.
Thank you very much.
So the next question is going to be about youth voice, the theme of today. And to introduce the question, I'm first going to ask our wonderful co-host, Ayan, to take center stage and share a little bit about your work and why youth voice is important to you.
Thank you very much. Well, my story with education started with mothers like Ria, who I used to communicate, advocate for in Tower Hamlets, East London. I don't know if many of you know of that space, but over nearly 50% of our young people are struggling with poverty. And I'm talking about children in inner London who don't even have school shoes that are actually sustainable for them to walk into school with. Like, the problem was that severe. So I became a community advocate when I was in uni or whatnot to support a lot of the marginalized groups in that community who were like my mother, migrated from civil war, from such places where there weren't human rights. Also, a lot have lost their family members. A lot of these communities have come into London or in this borough in order to have a better chance at life, a better life. But what was happening is the mothers couldn't understand why the report that they were getting back from the school was your child is disruptive, or your child is not engaging, your child is this. This is a child that just survived civil war. What do we expect from them in a class where we're expecting them, as the lovely lady, young lady just mentioned, when we're comparing and not actually looking at the needs of these young people that are in there? So to prove to the parent, to the mother, as much as I tried to convince mothers, it is not your child, that's the problem, it's a broken system, there was that difficulty. So I took it upon myself to become a science teacher in Tower Hamlets in order to advocate for the young people. And I spent over 6 years in the education system, and it's rigid. It is very, very rigid. It is not developing as fast as we're developing. It's not in tune with globalization. It's not in tune with our individual selves. So after doing that and realizing things weren't moving as fast as we needed them to move, I started my own consultancy firm called Voicing Voices, which is essentially the stories of this community, the stories of my international family who are struggling on a day-to-day basis for an education that they have a human right to. So I want to, honestly, everyone that's here, everyone that's in a decision-making space, these are human lives at the end of the day. These are human beings that deserve the access to be able to better their circumstances. This isn't a charity situation. This is better for our economics. This is better for our social development. This is better for everything else, all these SDGs that we are trying to achieve. It lies in education and it lies in access, and I really hope we can take something from this and transform education in a way that is inclusive and accessible to every single human being. So that's kind of my story.
Round of applause, please. Yes, I am. Love it. Love it. Okay, and that introduces perfectly our next question, which is, Ria?
So question 2 is, how could you make space for children and young people to help transform education?
So this could be things you're already doing in your work, or it could be a commitment that you take away with you to help light the fire under this youth movement, under this education movement. So if we could have the lights up in the room once again, we're going to come around to answer questions. First of all, I would like to come to one of our friends at Generation Unlimited. You might have to throw the microphone. We'll come back to you because that could hurt someone. Who's got a hand up over on this side of the room? How could you make space for young people? Okay, over to you on this side of the room, yes. And please stand up and give a quick introduction to yourself.
Hello everyone, my name is Precious, I am 24. I am on the Young People Action Team of Generation Unlimited. I also work with the African Union Commission in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. If you ask me from the top of my head to answer this question, how we can make spaces for children and young people to transform education, what comes to mind quickly is systemizing and institutionalizing in such a way that young people are incorporated into decision-making processes. So for example, I am part of the Young People Action Team of the Generation Unlimited, and what happens is I serve as part of the sounding board of Generation Unlimited. So this means that decisions, program implementation, design of activities that happen in Generation Unlimited has to go through young people. The essence of this is it makes it effective and very importantly sustainable. So young people are, well, they are the ones who feel the things that we're discussing. They are the ones who experience the problem. So what better way to implement solutions for young people better than having them involved in the decision-making processes?
Completely agree, and that's why we're here right now. Do we have someone here yet? The hands have gone up now. There was a small moment where it looked like everyone was going to be too nervous. Go ahead. No nerves here.
Can you hear me? Yes, you can. I'm Johnny from Poland, from Fridays for Future. In my country, we have an advisory youth board to the Ministry of Education, as well to the Ministry of Climate and other ministries. I think it's a great idea to have such a thing in your countries, because then you have a youth advisory board that just advises the minister or the president or the prime minister as well. So then your voice is just directly shared with the person in power.
Thank you very much. Talking from experience, do we have someone over this side?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Nick Oneto.
I'm from Venezuela. To begin with, I would like to speak about the role that youth will be playing over the coming years in our world. The main challenge that we young people today are facing is building bridges, break down barriers, so that we can have bridges of communication that are permanent, that will enable us, young people, that are in the process of learning, generating spaces for things like South-South cooperation, for example. Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia should intensify their cooperation. Standing together, we can break down the barriers of inequality, of underdevelopment, and educational lagging behind. Because it's up to us, or we will be the ones who are going to be facing these challenges that affect all countries, but especially those in our situation. Now, student associations should have a lively presence in the private spaces in our countries. But we've created 2 federations in Venezuela for middle education and one for university education. And what this means is that students in Southeast Asia, for example, could liaise with Latin American students. And if we were to work together like this, we'd be much more successful. Cooperation through dialogue. This is politics, or policy with a capital P, and this is what will enable young people to transform education and thereby to change the world and make it a better place.
Passion, yes, over here.
Good day, Christina Williams from Jamaica.
Hi.
So I noted the question, how could you make space for children and young people? But I would like to challenge our organizers today, especially as we go into the New York Summit, that we need to talk about how can you make space for children, young people, and students. We cannot talk about education and don't specify students, because student activism and student movements is a very integral, essential, indispensable part of the process, and it's a little bit different than a generalization of young people. Let me give you an example of that. We need elected student representatives in our schools. We talk about decision making and we talk about having different youth groups. That is great and we applaud that. And as a young person who sits on different youth advisory boards, I applaud that part of it. But as a president of students from my country, I see the difference and why it's important. In Jamaica, we actually legislate that there must be an elected student on each school board in our country, which means that despite political will or lack thereof, despite the existence or absence of a youth advisory board, you must have a student there. And why is a student important? Because the student experiences that education in a more hands-on way. So a young person external can advise because they're a young person and they're introduced and they go through education likely. But when a student within the specific system give that suggestion, is consulted, is a part of that process in a meaningful way, you actually see even more equitable and inclusive outcomes. So let's add children, young people, and students to help transform education. Thank you.
Love it.
We've got one over here, Jack.
So if the first question was the why, this is all about the how, and it's real life examples. I love it. Yes, over to you.
Unfortunately, in life, we always go back to our sources. That's what life tells us. We always go back to our sources, to our origins. And the origin of everything is education. If there's no education, we don't start again. And if we don't start again, then that means that we're going to make mistakes in life. I think that the question that we see up on the screen is how to educate children as an point of origin, but not just mathematics, chemistry, and physics, but in the original thing, that we're not alone in life. We are all togetherness. And if everybody else wins, then I'm going to win. And that they don't see the world as that for me to win, everybody else has to lose. Today, unfortunately, teacher is like the engine in a truck. And for the steering wheel to work, the engine has to do all the work. So everything that you do in the car is driven by the engine. But what are we focusing more on, the body or the engine? And if you look at the role of teachers in the world, we have to go back to the origins, teaching our children, and not just mathematics, language skills, etc., but to teach them that they're not alone. Going back to that point of origins will bear fruit later on. We are all here because a teacher one day taught somebody how to invent a microphone, use electricity, etc. So we have to go back to the origins because that is what life teaches us time and again. Thank you.
I know there have been 3 people with their hands up really since the very start at the back of the room. So after you, we'll go to one of these guys at the back. And we'll do, yes, over to you. And we'll do some quick answers now so we can get a few more people in before the final section. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Samuel Haynes. I'm the youth representative from Guyana, and I must thank the UNESCO for this opportunity to speak. To answer your question, you asked how could we make space for children and young people to help transform education. For this, I believe that first, we need to reinvent the way that the mind perceives the entire holistic process of education. We can speak about achieving all of our SDG 4 goals, but if our young people are not motivated to get out there and join electoral bodies like student governments, there's no way that this can be done. So I believe that this encompasses helping the students and teachers to enjoy education. This means that they should be feeling safe, they should have opportunities to use their motivational talents, across all disciplines, and to be exposed to forums and workshops that truly appreciate all of their talents. And there should also be adequate compensation for teachers. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, at the back, we'll have let's do all 3 of you, unless you've answered together very quickly as a trio.
Okay. So, I'm sorry for taking everyone's place to speak right now, but we just get 2 questions, so I'm really excited. So, since some awareness campaigns that have already been done, like lectures or maybe TED Talks, might be boring for people that are younger than us, I would bet on some fun games or some smart but also quick presentations where it could be like called and described as a fun philosophy class. Like teachers would do presentations with some pictures that kids would love to see, with small descriptions so they know what they're looking at, and they would also know what's right and what's wrong. So they get that perception, even though they get their minds already fulfilled at home by their parents, because everything that we think gets filtered, of course. This, not just in terms of equity, but also in empathy, because that's one of the most crucial things that makes us human beings. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm really sorry, everyone, but I'm going to have to wrap up the questions. So these conversations will have to continue after this session in the evening here around the building. We have no more time to take answers from the floor because we have to talk about the one way that you can all bring children and young people's voices to the floor, a tool that we would like to share with you today. So yeah, if you, Ayan and Ria, could come back and join me on the stage. Thank you all in the room. Thank you everyone online, and we'll find a way to share this on social media. Our social media is @The World's Lesson, so that you can see all of the things that have been added. So, to close today, you've all had a moment in this incredible forum with people from all over the world to raise your voice, say what you think. We can take this energy into the future with us. And we, at the World's Largest Lesson, in partnership with UNICEF, UNESCO, NetApp, and many others, many of you who are in this room and others around the world, have developed a tool because we want to keep this conversation going, and we want to create a platform for children and young people in education to raise their voice. So, if we go over to the next slide, this is the Transforming Education Survey. It's the first ever fully playable survey on education, designed from children's perspectives so that they can, in a short amount of time, play a survey, answer some questions, flick, tap, slide, all of those kind of app moves, not to sound too much like a boomer. They can explain their experiences of education, the kinds of things they're learning about, the kinds of things they'd like to learn about, how they're learning, how they might like to learn, what they think the purpose of education is, and what they think the purpose of education should be. So we've developed this with thanks to Playverto, who I know Mike Sunny from Playverto is here, whoop whoop, big up to you, as a free tool that we want everyone to use. It's fully global. It's playable online. You can just share the link with a young person in your life. You can post it on social media. You can use it with a lesson plan in the classroom. You can set it as homework. You can put it on the radio, talk about it on TV. We want to share it with the world. You can use it offline as a completely digital free paper version. We want to create a huge data set, a huge amount of information about what children from the ages of 10 upwards, children and young people experiencing education, are feeling right now, so that they can feel what you guys have felt, like they have been heard. A new generation which has never been asked, they're being asked for the first time what their experience of education is, and it's our job to then take it into the world, use that mandate to help transform education. But don't take my word for it. Next slide, please. You'll see on the screen a QR code and a website. You can go onto the survey right now, play it. You'll be some of the first people in the world ever to play the survey. You can see what it's all about. And we would love to connect with you guys to help share it around the world. So we are the World's Largest Lesson. For the Transforming Education Summit, we live over at the red SDG 4 sticky notes wall, so you can find us there. You also have Kinvara, the lovely Kinvara with the microphones, email, and you can find us at the World's Largest Lesson. So that was the plug for the Transforming Education Survey. All that's left is to do, I think what we do is a kind of applause ripple, and I'll thank everyone while you all applaud. So first of all, I thank you to Ria, who came and performed for us today. Big up, big up. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And thank you to Ayan as well, our co-presenter, the wonderful Ayan. I thank you to the organisers, festival organisers, to keep the applause going. Ripple, 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 ripple. A massive thank you to the translators who've been in your ears. And most of all, thank you to all of you in the room and online, wherever you are. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this highly interactive and engaging session. Our final one for the day will focus on the process of developing a youth declaration. It is also interactive and involves intergenerational dialogues. Please welcome His Excellency Santiago Irazabal Mourao, President of UNESCO's General Conference, Mr. Leonardo Garnier, Special Advisor of the Secretary General on the Transforming Education Summit, Ms. Hayatma Wickramanayake, UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, and last but certainly not least, Ms. Doris Mikali, SDG 4 Youth Representative to the SDG 4 Education 2030 High-Level Steering Committee.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, there we go. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to those who are watching us online. Thank you for being with us here today. And as the moderator introduced, my name is Jayatma Wickramanayake. I'm the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth. I work as an advisor and a representative of UN Secretary General on all matters related to young people. And of course, education is one big issue and an opportunity that young people care about. So I'm extremely privileged to be here with the distinguished panelists today, and I thank the Transforming Education Summit Secretariat for the kind invitation. When he presented the idea for a Transforming Education Summit in the Our Common Agenda report of the Secretary General, he said that we stand in the crossroads of history, that all actions or inactions today will determine whether we break down or break through the current multifaceted crises that we are facing as humanity. And education is key to secure a breakthrough for people and for the planet, with young people at the front and center. However, for that, we must transform education and education systems, and young people's views, their recommendations, and most importantly, their commitments must be at the front and center. So with that in mind, us at the United Nations have come together to support young people in a youth-led process to gather their collective voice in a youth declaration that will be presented to world leaders at the Transforming Education Summit. And I want to share the two main purposes of the youth declaration that we will be discussing today. The first one is we have this pre-summit. We also have multiple conversations happening in the online space on social media through the social media campaigns. And up until September, we will have many conversations of what it means to transform education. But we want to capture all of them into one succinct document to really say that as youth collectively, this is what we are demanding from world leaders. So to feed into the chair's summary of the Transforming Education Summit, this youth declaration will play a role. And the second objective of the youth declaration is that it will be a compendium of the views, recommendations, and commitments from young people when it comes to transforming education. To clarify a little bit about the process, and Doris will do that later in the conversation as well, this is a completely youth-led process. As the UN, we are only playing a supportive role and a facilitated role. The young people will lead and convene and draft and really finalize the youth declaration for the Transforming Education Summit. And it will not be reinventing the wheel. We will be looking at, in this process, also the previous consultations that have been done with young people. For an example, for the Futures of Education report launched by UNESCO, the outcomes of different summits, the Rewired Summit, the Big Brainstorm from Unlock the Future Coalition, and so many more consultations that have led us to this point. And we'll also gather these views, recommendations, and commitments through the world's largest lesson survey on futures of education, the U-Report poll by UNICEF, and also the online activation and the social media campaign by UNESCO. So there are multiple ways to feed into the declaration, but the first in-person consultation with young people will be tomorrow, 8 to 10 a.m. And I hope that all of you will be there, and the thoughts that you shared today in these sessions will also, you will bring into the youth consultation tomorrow, which will really be for us the foundation to start working on the compilation of the Youth Declaration. With that in mind, I'm excited to talk to our panelists about the Youth Declaration, what it means and how it can be implemented. First of all, Doris Mikali. Doris, you're an executive member of the SDG 4 Youth Network and one of the many young people who are driving this process. I want to ask from you, as a young person and as youth activists who've been working on education issues for a long time, what are your expectations from the Youth Declaration, and why is it important to have a Youth Declaration?
Hello. Hello? Oh, thank you. My name is Doris Mikali. As introduced, I am the youth representative to the Sherpa Group at the High Level Steering Committee. One of the reasons why I think our youth declaration is important because it's an instrument for us to hold ourselves as young people accountable and hold stakeholders accountable. I think, just a random question, how many people here don't work at the education sector? How many people here do not work in education? Fantastic, 3 people or 4 people. And do you know why that is dangerous? Because we already know there's an education crisis. We already know the need of putting young people at the center of transforming education. And we don't need to be talking amongst ourselves. We need to be talking to other people that are not working with education for them to understand the current learning crisis and for them to understand the importance of transforming conventional learning system. That's what needs to be done. So the Youth Declaration will give us an opportunity to communicate as young people, to come together, to strategically mobilize, to draw attention to the current learning crisis. So the young people that are going to join us here tomorrow for the consultation, and the young people that have been in the process of consultation, as the UN Youth Envoy has mentioned, there have been ongoing consultations. You need to speak to people that are outside the education sector, because we already know what is going on. We already understand the crisis, but that's not the point. We don't need to be talking amongst ourselves. We need to be tagging the Minister of Finance. You need to be talking to the Minister of Environment for them to understand the need for environmental education. You need to be speaking to your gender minister to them to understand education, so that all stakeholders can understand at the end of the day, education is foundational for us to transition into a sustainable future. So the Youth Declaration is an instrument for us to do that, for us to strategically mobilize for political momentum and commitment. As we have said, this is a political summit, right? It is not a technical summit. So I am a bit worried, and I hope you challenge yourself after this Youth Declaration, after all the inspirational conversation, to talk to somebody outside this bubble. Those are the people we need to understand what is going on. Tag people that are outside this place. Tag people that work in science, people that are working in IT, for them to understand at the end of the day, you go to one core thing, education. Because the climate movement has been able to do a fantastic job rallying the entire community to understand why we have a climate crisis. We need to do the same as young people. And the Youth Declaration will give us an opportunity to do that. So as young people also, we need to also communicate it in a very fun way. It doesn't need to be another document that will gather dust after New York. So we need to strategically know how to communicate our priorities that are within the Youth Declaration. Do a TikTok, pick one segment that you care about. If it's IT, tweet about that. Do a TikTok about it. Do a live about it and speak to the people in your community why ministers of education need to prioritize this, why they need to budget this, why there's a learning crisis, why it's important for every single child in the world to learn. You know, we need to do this. So I think the Youth Declaration is an opportunity to do that. But as young people, we are 15% of the population. It is our responsibility to mobilize strategically. We don't need to come to Paris, take pictures at UNESCO and say we have done something. We have a great opportunity here, a unique opportunity for the Transforming Education Summit to gather political momentum outside the education sector. That is what is needed. And it is that political and strategic advocacy that is going to push leaders in New York to really understand why they need to prioritize education. So for young people, please come tomorrow for the consultation and mobilize outside. I really don't want us to talk amongst ourselves. Everybody here cares about education. I don't think there's anybody who thinks education is not fun or important, but we need to speak outside. And that's what the Youth Declaration is going to do for us. So please come, share it, and also take an opportunity to share it within your community, because I've had a lot of young people here recognizing about their privilege. I'm also privileged to be here, but just don't recognize it. Do something about it. Go to your community and gather the voices of other young people and bring it as part of the consultation, because the consultation doesn't just end here tomorrow. We're going to be continuing doing consultation till New York. Use your privilege in a constructive way. Go and talk to the young people in your communities that are not able to join these consultations. Ask them, challenge them, and let us mobilize strategically. As young people, we need to stop waiting for stakeholders to create spaces for us. We are 15% of the population. We could make this thing stop. We need to come together strategically, and we need to put education at the forefront of everything that is done by governments. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Doris, for reminding us of the power of youth, but also strategies to really use the declaration process more inclusive, but also impactful, right? Now I want to turn to His Excellency Santiago Maurao, the President of the General Conference of UNESCO. Your Excellency, Doris spoke about how it is important to reach out to the Minister of Education, the Minister of Finance, and as a part of my advocacy for this summit, I've asked the member states based out of New York to include young people as much as possible in their national consultations, either leading up to the summit or will happen in the course of the summit or after the summit. So we're trying to get as many as youth voices heard here in the pre-summit, in the actual summit, and in the national consultations. But what can we do to actually make sure that at the end of the day, policymakers don't just listen to young people and say thank you and let them go home, but they actually take action on the demands and the recommendations of young people?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for this question. I think it's a very important question. I cannot say anything else than Doris has already said, so I think the answer is there. What I can say is that the fact that we have decided to start this conference, this meeting, this summit with this youth forum is already a symbol, is already an understanding on all of us on our side that listen to young people, listen to the youth is crucial. In other words, it's not simple saying that it's the right of youth to speak and to say. It is the necessity. We have to listen to that. You have not only the right, but you have the duty, and this is something that we are very glad to see here. And it is an experience that UNESCO has had. It's the first organization that had a youth forum. I had the opportunity of closing the 12th youth forum here in November during the 41st General Assembly as president of the conference, General Conference, and it was very important. And the document has been incorporated to the documentation, and it's part of the documentation that is today under the consideration and is part of the reflection of ministers of education in all the countries that are members of this constituency. Therefore, it's important. And it's important to listen because if it is true that the crisis, the pandemic crisis and all has been is global, but it has impact in very different ways, and different solutions has been thought and has been implemented in different places. And this is something fundamental for all this process, which is we have to start thinking first that we cannot work with the idea of one size fits all. This is something that we have to look at the very different situations in order to bring them all and make sure that all these experiences are taken into consideration. All the solutions that have been presented are taken into consideration, so as we can get a feeling of the situation in which we are, which, frankly speaking, we get out of this pandemic crisis in a worse shape than we imagined that we will go. So it's, we are now, and we have now, the great opportunity, all of us, to work on a new contract, new social contract, in all the areas, and education is one of them. Maybe it's the most important. We can discuss that, but frankly, I think it's the most important. So we are going to start from now on to see what's coming ahead, and we have to discuss that because it's an uncharted universe that is in front of us, an uncharted world. We do not know exactly. It is time for us to think, sit around, having in mind that we have to work and act very quickly and very strongly. That's why we have to look at how we are going to go through and make better to solve the divides that we see in our societies, not only the divide of gender, the digital divide, etc., the lack of opportunities, equal opportunities for all. And it is important to have all of you here because you represent here the largest portion of the humanity today. I think historically we haven't had that many young people around. We are 52% or around that, so it's an enormous potential that must be heard, must be listened to, and that has suffered during this period in so strong ways, not only in the lack of education, but in other areas. And you have shown during this period your creativity, to your resilience, the creativity to use these new technologies that are here. So you have to bring this experience for all of us. We are, some of us fast learners, others may be slow learners. But anyway, you have to bring all these ideas to the table. And as you have said, Doris, you have to fight for them. Because something that we learn very quickly is that things are still the same until they change. But what is true is that they don't change alone. You have to change them. Otherwise, they keep as there is. So I will assure you that as president of the conference, I will make sure that your ideas, your documentation, your report will be channeled to the conference in New York in September. But not only there, we are going to make sure that all these ideas will be landed in the office of the Secretary General, so he can read them, he can listen to them in order to write his report at the end. So this common agenda, which is a common agenda not only for the organization, a common agenda for the UN family, is a common agenda for the international community, and this is the way that we are going to move, important way, in order to have a new contract, social contract, in which all of us, youth included, and very, very strong participation, we have all of us be engaged in this process. Thank you very much. Thank you, Doris. Thank you, Irfaan.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's great to have your commitment in terms of supporting the Youth Declaration and to have your trust even before you saw it. You have committed to take it and take it into action. So thank you for that. Now I want to turn to my colleague Leonardo Garnier, who is the Special Advisor for the Transforming Education Summit. Leonardo, the President was talking about, for an example, the importance of financing education and how it has to be a part of the new social contract. And we've heard throughout the summit the same same call of action by young people. We've heard young people demanding for climate education. We've heard young people demanding for human rights education, sexual and reproductive health education. But we don't see those demands necessarily reflected in our national action plans or national budgets. There's this huge gap between what the experts and what the young people and what the students want versus what our leaders are doing. And I think that the Transforming Education Summit is a great opportunity to bridge that gap and bring these two together. What opportunities do you think we can create in addition to this youth declaration within the summit process to bridge that gap and bring young people, students, and policymakers to the same table?
Yes. You listen? No. Now? Yeah. Thank you, Hijama. I think, first of all, I'm part of a generation that was known as baby boomers. My daughters now say I'm just a boomer. And what I've seen is that people from our generation, adults, teachers, politicians, they don't have a very good image of the new generations, be them millennials or centennials or Gen X's or whatever. They tend to think that young people of today is weak, not interested in serious things. They just want to be in social networks and have a good time. They don't really have a long-term job, and all the things that you can imagine. They are so wrong. And when you talk, as you were saying, with young people, they are absolutely interested in all those things. I remember, to quote again my daughters, because they teach you a lot, once I told them, why aren't you interested in politics? And they looked at me as, what do you mean? Of course we're interested in politics, we just don't like your parties. And that's the case. The new generations usually do things in a different way than the older generations. Not so long ago, May 1968, very young baby boomers were here in Paris taking the streets and with a very rebellious yell, and their slogan was beautiful, was, let's be realistic, ask for the impossible. And they sparked a movement that went all around the world. And yes, we had a lot of dreams. Some of them came true. In some we failed, and we failed badly. And in those that we failed badly are the ones that you're facing now. We have, as you were saying, a terrible crisis with the climate. We have a world where inequality is increasing at an alarming rates. When we think of education, well, those of you who have had an education are the lucky ones, the privileged ones, because half the children and young people in the world didn't have the chance to get an education. And we could make a long list of those things that are not working and are things that young people are worried about and want to do things about that, but want to do those things in a different way than we tried. And that's good because we failed, so it's not a bad idea to do it in a different way. So in terms of your question of how to succeed in that, I would say two things. And they are the same, and Doris, who should have spoken at the end, not at the beginning, already said it. First, of course, you have to get involved. You cannot wait for others to do your job. And the world, as you were saying, the world changes when we change it, so we have to be part of that, not just spectators. We have to participate. Participate how? I'm not going to tell you. Some will like to be part of politics, some would like to be activists, some would like to have a job and make a difference in the industry or the company that they are working. Some would be artists, and artists have been incredible in framing how we see, how we feel the world and how we change the world. So ways of participating are really for you to decide what to do. Do it with other people. Collaboration is something that is not just effective, but it's much nicer than do things alone. So, but that's something that these generations do much more than we imagine. Adults think that because you use social networks, you don't engage. That's, as you know, crazy. But the final thing, I think, is the most important. Sometimes I hear young people saying, I wanted to participate in this and they didn't give me the space, or they didn't allow me to. Listen, like in May '68 in Paris, young people don't have to ask for a space. They have to take it, and if you cannot take it, you make it. You don't have to ask for permission. You have to do what you have to do. We're living in a world that is better than the one we found, but it's a mess. And you have to take those places and change it. In the road, you will probably find some allies in the boomer generation, but you will also find a lot of people who cannot understand what you're doing. And as you were saying before, talk to them, explain them. They're not bad people, they are just boomers. What can we do? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leonardo, and I think that's part of the spirit of the Youth Declaration, but also I think all the activities that the SDG4 Youth Network and others in this space has been trying to carry out, which is to really create that intergenerational dialogue. I don't think anybody is saying that young people alone can solve this problem. I think what we are saying is that let's share power. Let's learn from the experience, expertise, wisdom from the older generations. Let's couple that with the lived realities of the unique expertise, innovation, creativity of the younger generation. Let's come up with better solutions than we did before. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Before we wrap up, I want to ask all three of you, you've been around today and you've heard so many solutions, challenges, ideas. What is that one thing, if you could summarize, that you will take home with you today? Doris, let's start with you.
I hope you're going to give me an opportunity to just say one thing before I get there. Today, I loved how we were talking about different things in education. We talked about gender, we talked about climate education, we talked about education in emergencies. And I remember one of the consultations I was with the UN Youth Envoy was the Solidarity Circle. And I will not forget one thing that the director for the United Nations Girls Initiative said. And she said that as young people, you need to learn one thing. You need to learn to be a good negotiator. And Leonardo just said one thing. You need to find what is your purpose within the pyramid. What are you good at? In a sense, education is a very big topic. It's very overwhelming. There's a lot to do. But for you to be able to make change, you need to understand what exactly are you negotiating at and be strategic when you're advocating for that. Because sometimes as young people, we are called into a room and we are complaining about 100 things, but you have 5 minutes. You know, you need to pick your battle, be strategic about it, and challenge the status quo. You need to challenge the status quo. You need to demand more, demand better. And as he said, ask for the impossible. But for you to do that, you need to be strategic about it. So as young people, I think when we're going back to the Youth Declaration and asking for political momentum, let's be strategic about it. Let's find ways to also share that, not only with education partners such as the Global Partnerships for Education or UNICEF, or partners working within here, but other partners such as the private sector, partners that are working on other issues to see how we could bring SDG4 at the core of transitioning to a more sustainable future. So what do I take away from this? What I take away from this is that there's a lot of momentum for education. We really do want to do something about it. And I'm so hopeful for what happened with the Youth Forum here. And I do hope it continues, not just from this Youth Forum, even during the ministerial sessions in the next 2 days, and even after New York, because the learning crisis cannot be solved by 2 summits. We cannot challenge conventional learning system with 2 summits. There's a lot of work to do. So I hope we'll channel this momentum, this enthusiasm for SDG number 4, even past September in New York. And as young people, we'll go back to where it's important, our communities. Localize this enthusiasm, work with the organizations that are working in the communities to ensure that SDG number 4 is at the core of all that we are doing and governments are investing in education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doris. Your Excellency, what is the one takeaway that you take from today's discussion?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I think, thank you, Doris. Thank you very much for it. I think that Leonardo gave us a little bit the map, the road map. Things is space has to be conquered. We have to move. Experience of all of us, humanity, is that the space is not there available all the time. You have to go for it. And this is a is a long process, no doubt. But it comes to my mind the sentence of a Brazilian singer that used to say that when you make a step forward, you are not longer in the same pace. You have changed. That is what is needed. And what is needed in this process, which is a long process, and we have had this experience in our generation. We started in '68 with all this movement that Leonardo reminded us. It was not an easy movement, and it was not an easy process, and we brought up to here a world which is better in some senses than it was, is not as good as it should be, and mistakes have been done, but this is what we managed to do during this period, and now it's time for you to push this process and move forward. But for this is needed 2 or 3 things. You have mentioned, Doris, here. The first is the engagement of everybody. But engagement needs the sense of ownership of the process. And of course, there is not going to be at the very beginning clarity on what are the paths to be followed. And most probably, you are going to follow some paths, and we are going to be with you in this process, no doubt about that. We may follow paths that are not exactly what will lead us to success. But this is the way this process works. So what is needed is to keep engagement, is needed to keep the sense of ownership, and it's needed to keep the momentum. And the only ones that are prepared to keep the momentums are you. Because most probably, if not, things are not going to change. Things change when somebody is going there to make it change. So that is what I think. It's a process that we hope, and I hope that we will be together with you in this process that I'm very fascinating. I think I'm very excited about. So let's go for it. And let's do this first step, which is today. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Leonardo, what is your key takeaway from today?
Well, again, as my predecessors, I'll say 2 things. One is that today you've been talking about a lot of different things from very different perspectives, and that is one way to see how different we all are. The human experience is about the diversity. We are all different, and the problem is that we live in a world where, with much frequency, we transform differences into inequalities. And those 2 things are not the same. We can be different, but when you're unequal, then it starts reproducing an unfairness situation. When some people have a right and other people who are different in some way, maybe gender, maybe race, maybe nationality, they don't have that right, then that is not really a right, that's a privilege. So we have to be very careful in understanding this human diversity and how interesting it is that we are all different. In fact, and I remember I used to say this a lot when I was a minister in Costa Rica with the students, because you probably heard that we have to use tolerance and be tolerant. And for example, if I say that I tolerate you, it doesn't sound very nice. Tolerance is not enough with diversity. We have to enjoy diversity. We have to accept it, but enjoy it. It's beautiful. The nicest part of being human is that we are all different. So we have to enjoy that diversity and understand that behind that diversity, we are all equal. And that's why we should have the same rights. So that's one first thing I take from the discussions today. And the other is not something that I take from the discussions, but it's something that I think it's, from my own experience, important. We always talk that we should be critical, critical thinking and all those things. But usually, we understand being critical with being critical of how the others think. Those who think different from me, then I'm critical of their thinking, and I build the argument to prove that they are wrong. And the real meaning of being critical is being critical of yourself or of your group or your association or whatever. And every time you're starting a movement, one of the important things is not just asking how the other could be wrong, but no, maybe we are wrong, and revise your arguments and strengthen your arguments. And if you're wrong, change your arguments, of course, but understanding the importance of being critical. I will finish with an anecdote of a professor at the university that it was terrible. He had this obsession with critical thinking, and he wanted his students to have critical thinking. And the way in which he understood whether he had been successful was when his students thought the same as him, which is exactly the opposite. I love when my students think differently than I. So that would be my advice. Be critical of yourselves.
Thank you very much, Leonardo, for your takeaway, but also for that incredible advice. In closing, I think we will all remind ourselves that we need young people not only today on Stakeholder Engagement Day or the Youth Day. We need young people throughout the summit process, in the next 2 days, in the pre-summit, rest of the pre-summit, but also at the Transforming Education Summit itself. So for an example, myself and this special representative of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children has written to all UN member states to ask them to include youth delegates in their national delegations in September to the Transforming Education Summit. So when you go home, reach out to your Ministry of Foreign Affairs and ask, who is in your delegation to the summit? Can we be a part of your country's delegation to the summit and hold them to account and reach out to them to also offer your contribution as young people who have now this experience of being a part of the pre-summit. My message to the young people who will continue to be with us throughout the youth declaration process is to also be very aware of our privileges and to always check in the room if we have everyone as much as possible represented. Do we have young people living with disabilities? Do we have multilingual young people? Do we have queer young people? Do we have young women and girls? Do we have young refugee migrants? Young people in all their diversity, are they represented? Are we taking into account all views? We will not all agree, as Leonardo said, on all the points, but we can certainly find common ground as a generation on the issues that we care about and that we want our leaders to focus on. And the fourth point to summarize is something that Doris and Leonardo both said in terms of power and the spaces created for young people and stakeholders in civil society in general. And when I first started in my job and in my first 3 months, I was extremely frustrated because there were no avenues for young people to participate in intergovernmental processes at the UN. And I went to the Secretary General and I complained to him. There's no space, there's no funding. How am I supposed to do my job? And he said, listen, power will never be given to you on a silver platter. You will always have to fight for it because we still work in systems that perpetrate the inequalities that Leonardo was talking about, that are still colonialist, that are still patriarchal, that still perpetuate these inequalities that we see in society. So they'll not create spaces and fund them, and they will not make the visa processes easy for you and make all of it conducive and say, now come and make us hold us accountable. You know, you will always have to fight for it, and I think the best way you can fight for it is by building coalitions, by building support across borders, across continents, across issue areas, learning by the experiences of other youth activists. And I can assure you that those who have access to these decision-making rooms will continue to be your allies and continue to create spaces for you. Let's continue to challenge the narrative of seeing people still as beneficiaries of education, really understanding and recognizing them as partners and leaders when it comes to education, because education is not something nice that you for young people. It's a fundamental human right, it's a global public good, and it's a public responsibility. So let's act like it. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I now hand over to the moderators.
Thanks to all the moderators, speakers, and panelists that joined today and showcased how they're transforming education in their own communities. And for those who joined via internet, thank you for joining and for being part of this day today. As a final thought, I want to highlight the importance of youth agency. Let's rephrase intergenerational dialogue into intergenerational collaboration. And let this youth forum drive the momentum for what youth engagement can mean.
After a very long day in which we discovered a lot, I'd like to thank all of those who spoke, but all of you who are here from all over the world to defend your convictions. What we do on a daily basis is essential. We've talked about transforming education in crisis times, and we've just finished one crisis, namely the pandemic. So we must learn those lessons because there will probably be future crises. And I'd like to present Asalfo, our Goodwill Ambassador, who is going to say a few words. It's my pleasure to introduce Asalfo.
Merci.
Thank you.
Bonsoir à tous.
Good evening to all. I know that many of you are waiting for a pleasant evening and the show that you're going to see. I would just like to say that I have been UNESCO Ambassador for Literacy and Peace Promotion for a number of years, and it's always an opportunity for people like me to promote education as well. And so I'm here this afternoon to transmit a significant message, I believe, to our leaders. This is a pre-summit, and the main summit will take place in New York. I myself won't be present, but I want to take advantage of this opportunity to say something to our decision makers, to our leaders, because I want to tell them that the time really has come to make education a priority. Education must become something that is at the very top of the political agenda. Without education, there's no development. It is the main development indicator, the most important development indicator of any country. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you about what we've done at the Magic System Foundation. We have understood that you can't talk about transforming education without talking about infrastructure. Infrastructure is essential. And with this foundation, the Magic System Foundation, we are building schools. We're up to our 9th school now. And it's not just the decision makers. It's not just the state that should be building schools. We can also do this as a civil society, as NGOs, as groups of NGOs. We can contribute our brick to the building effort. So education must be a priority. It's the foundation of everything. And I hear people say, yes, there's climate warming, there are wars, there's terrorism, there are epidemics. But very often it is the lack of education that has resulted in all of these scourges. If people were well educated, sustainable development would have been achieved quite some time ago. So with education, we can eradicate all of these scourges. You can't talk about protecting the environment without education. You can't talk about poverty eradication without education. You can't talk about peace without education. Education is really at the heart of everything. So we, as a foundation, won't be at New York, but I can tell those leaders that we will be listening to what they decide, and we will be watching what they do. They have to go to New York, take the decisions, and then really implement them and put education at the heart of all development efforts. Thank you. Yes. Yes. I know that we've almost finished. You've nevertheless applauded. Thank you. So perhaps I can now take off my jacket as a goodwill ambassador and turn into an artist for the remainder of the evening.
On était ensemble, à la reine princesse, au billet maquillot, à seul faut rien à pouler. Quand l'argent est fini, tout a changé de côté. Waribana, elle a changé de copain. Dieu merci pour moi, je savais chanter un peu. J'ai fait ma cassette, on me voit à la télé. Matin, midi, soir, c'est moi qui chante à la radio. En tout à vie, c'est le cas où à percer. Attends, je vais partir le couper. Mais on dit premier gaou n'est pas gaou. C'est deuxième gaou qui est nyatao. On dit premier gaou n'est pas gaou. C'est deuxième gaou qui est nyatao. Dimanche matin et coco, on frappe à ma porte. À ma grande surprise, c'est la go en touche et voix. Ensemble, j'ai dit, il y a longtemps, c'est plus revu. Elle veut me mentir, elle dit, chérie, j'avais voyagé. Je suis de retour, je t'appartiens. Prends-moi cadeau, fais ce que tu veux. Mais on dit, premier gaou n'est pas gaou. Deuxième gaou qui est nyatao. J'ai dit chérie cocoé, qu'est-ce que tu veux manger? Sans même hésiter, elle me dit poulet braisé. Pourtant on me dit premier gaou n'est pas gaou. C'est deuxième gaou qui est nyatao. J'ai dit chérie cocoé, ce poulet tu veux manger? Poulet est trop petit, ça peut pas te rassasier. C'est caïman braisé. Je vais te donner et de nous d'éléphant, tu vas manger. Elle est fâchée, elle s'en va à la maison. Si elle va à la maison, population va me tuer. Je lui ai demandé pardon et elle a accepté. À un moment donné, elle a tout gâté. Elle est quittée dans le poulet, elle s'en va dans l'eau.
Hey, les gars, vous êtes assis pendant toute la journée.
Well, you've been sitting all day long. Since this morning, you've been in meetings, you've been at a conference, and now you have this opportunity to stand up and really enjoy yourself a bit. So please, please, stand up. Stand up. I mean, we have to have everyone moving and shaking. Let's hear that. Let's see that.
Allez, 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 feel the magic in the air. Allez, 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 feel the magic in the air.
Magic system, Red One, Shawty. Feel the magic in the air. Comme d'habitude on est calé, comme toujours ça va aller. On te met l'ambiance à gogo, tous ensemble on fait le show. On t'invite à la magie, y'a pas de la poursuite. Oublie tes soucis, c'est bien faire la folie. On t'invite à la magie, y'a pas de la poursuite. Oublie tes soucis. Oh, 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 oh. Magic in the feel the magic in the air. Feel the magic in the air. C'est pas seulement pour les bobos. Nous on vient d'Alou Mambo. Mon ami, si tu as le niveau, rejoins-nous pour t'enjailler. On t'invite à la magie, y'a pas de la poursuite. Oublie tes soucis, et viens faire la folie. On t'invite à la magie, y'a pas de la poursuite. Oublie tes soucis. Oh, 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 oh. Feel the magic in the air. Feel the magic in the air. Feel the magic in the air. Ah ouais, tout le monde est comme ça. Ça change pas. Ah ouais. Est-ce que ça va? Avec Red One. Est-ce que ça marche? On vient du ghetto pour aller plus haut. Avec le magicien, c'est le du go-go-go. On vient du ghetto pour aller plus haut. Avec le magicien, oh oh oh. Feel the magic in the air. Levez les mains, feel the magic in the air. Levez les mains, feel the magic in the air. Levez les mains, feel the magic in the air. Levez les mains. Loussana. Eh Bernie, il y a le chant ici. Est-ce qu'on peut aller Lousse? Merci. Merci à tout le monde. Loussana.
magic in the air.
Voilà. Alors, une dernière pour la route comme ça. Tout le monde va lever les mains.
Allez, feel the magic in the air.
Et ceux qui hésitent encore de venir sur scène, venez nous rejoindre sur scène.
Allez, allez,
Feel the magic in the air. Levez les mains. Magic system. Red One, Shawty. Levez les mains. ça change pas. Tout le monde, Shawty, avec Redman. Est-ce que ça marche? Ça va pas. On vient du ghetto pour aller plus haut. Avec les magiciens, c'est le niveau. On vient du ghetto pour aller plus haut. Avec les magiciens. Oh, oh, oh. Le magique qui est. Levez les mains en l'air. Film de magique qui est. Levez les mains en l'air. Film de magique qui est. Levez les mains en l'air. Film de magique qui est. Levez les mains en l'air.
Merci. Merci à tout le monde. Merci à tous. Merci à tout le monde. Et vive l'éducation. Merci.
Merci.
What up? Wow. Okay. Hello? Hello? It's not on. Yeah. Don't worry. Okay, perfect.
Encore.
I think it's just for the
On va faire la photo de famille.
Okay, everyone. Okay. Okay. Okay, everyone, can you go to your place? We're gonna make a picture with magic system and picture of family of the youth forum. So please go to your seat and we're gonna make a picture together. Thank you.
Okay, no, and also.
What a great way to end the youth forum by attending the reception, which will start 6:30 p.m. in the Japanese garden, and I hope to see you all there in a few minutes.
Le selfie, c'est comment? Allô? C'est comment le selfie? Même vous n'êtes même pas complet, alors qu'il est mieux vous organiser. Attends, je vais faire une photo rapidement.
c'est bon, salut. On s'est retrouvés enfin ici. Tu vois un peu. Mais non, là-bas, ils avaient croisé devant le... C'est même pas moi qui me vu en plus, les gars, c'est la salle. On n'en fait pas. Non, une photo avec lui, c'est ça.